Good evening and Baruchim Habayim Rabotai. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night's class. Tonight's class I sponsored for the speedy recovery of my mother's father, my grandfather, who had open heart surgery. He's in his high 90s. He's a Holocaust survivor. Hashem should help. He should recover from this and get home safe and healthy and live until 120. Yitzchak ben Sarah li'ufuah shlema be'ezrat Hashem. Yeah, it's kind of scary, honestly, when the elders get stuck in hospitals. Definitely since COVID, it gets even scarier. But Hashem will help. We'll have only good news. I hope to share great news. Maybe we'll sponsor another class, Blina, as a thank you for him getting home healthy and safe. So, tonight, I want to talk about a little bit that has to do with Tu B'Shvat and the Parsha. And I think there's really some practical life advice that can really make a difference. But I'm going to give you a disclaimer. In general, I'm very, very cautious to only speak about things that I worked on for many years myself, and I'm very confident that at least I'm in the right direction on. Tonight I'm doing something very different. I'm giving myself a little bit of a self-coaching lecture on what I have to correct. And by the way, you happen to be hearing it, and maybe you'll benefit from it as well. I used to go on a speaking tour with a non-Jewish speaker in the secular world, in the university runs, and she was a psychologist, and she would start out her speeches, her opening statement of every speech was, "My life has problems because I'm in it, and your life is going to have problems because you're in it. Now let's learn how to deal with them." And I used to love that. When we toured together, every time I would hear it, it was like a wake-up call again. Yeah, all right, so we have problems, but now let's learn how to deal with them instead of realizing what the problems are. But I think it all blends in. So it's going to be Tu B'Shvat Sunday night. We can call it a partial holiday. It doesn't have the halachot of a Yom Tov, but at the same time, it does have certain aspects of a day of celebration. Really, Tu B'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot. It has to do with trees, not with us. But we still have some version of celebration to it. Happens to be historically, when I say historically, I'm talking about over 800 years that is documented. Tu B'Shvat in the world was a day in Chutz La'aretz, meaning everywhere except for Israel, was a day that people did actions or had some sort of emphasis on their great desire and yearning to living in Israel. To the point that under the guidelines of not running into issues of Tumot U'Ma'asot, or this year Shemitah, many people in different countries around the world, it's documented, including great rabbis, would look to buy a fruit from Israel in Chutz La'aretz to be able to eat on Tu B'Shvat. Now, I don't know how advisable that is. This year it's not applicable because of Shemitah. You can't take fruit from Israel outside of Israel. But even on a year that's not the case, it's not advisable because there's a lot of halachot with fruits from Israel, like Tumah and Maaser and whatever, and unless we know for sure that all that was done properly, obviously it would be better not to. But the concept, it was a day of yearning, V'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, that we should be able to live in Israel, and inshallah soon, Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mhera, amen. But now, there is an interesting thought that was given over. It's brought out in a book called Yamim Ba'im, which I liked. And I think there's so much to take away from this. In the millennial era, we have 4 main criteria for how we want our life to be. We'll use 4 words. I, everything revolves around me. That's the biggest one. I this, I that. The amount of times the person says I a day, oh my God. Now, everything has to be instant. Instacart, Instagram, Insta this, everything instant. Anything called instant works. That's a very useful term in advertising also. Years ago, even to do something as simple as laundry, a person would go to the river, and it was a whole day story to do laundry. The Gemara describes that people would dedicate more than one day sometimes just to be able to wash their clothes, because there was washing it and then bringing it back and then hoping nothing fell on the way that needs to be washed again, and then hanging it and letting it dry. It was a whole story. By now, it's either the laundromat or we have one unit that does the wash and the dry and everything and wrinkle-free clothes. because again, it has to be at the push of a button. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's great, it makes life more convenient. But that's another fundamental that people have now. Everything has to be now, instant. A third would be here, meaning not only do I want it now, I want to be close to it now. For example, this is an example hopefully that none of us use because there's halacha issues with it. But some people get a paycheck and they don't even have the patience to deposit it in the bank and wait for tomorrow for it to clear. They'll go spend 2 or 3% of their paycheck to go to a check cashing because they need the money this second here. You have the money now, but no, I wanted my. Now I'm not talking those who do it out of desperation or whatever because they're financially less fortunate. So it's not only that we want things instantly, we want them with us instantly, even if we obtained what we wanted. Express shipping. How much money a year is spent in the United States in express shipping? Somebody has an item, he already acquired it. The item exists, legally it belongs to him. He can either get it tomorrow for $50 or in 2 days for $10. But he'll still pay $50 because that extra day of not having something here is intolerable. And then comes the biggest flaw or trap that we fall into, everything. Unfortunately, we all became, myself included, a generation of everything or nothing. And anything in between is not good enough. It's either we want to be very rich or we give up on our financial careers and don't make an effort. We want the perfect soulmate or we give up on love. We want the perfect car or who cares, whatever, I'll take the train. Everything extreme. Something that's somewhat in the middle, well balanced, never an option anymore. Used to be things that were at 50% were amazing, were beyond amazing. That was beating the odds in every way, shape, and form. Today, there is no 50%. It's I do it all or I do it nothing. Unfortunately, this had affected many people's observance of Judaism. I can write a book probably on the amount of times in a month that I hear from boys and girls that they don't observe anything Jewish. Not because they don't want to, because I'm not going to do it all anyway, so who cares? Literally in those words. And that is the silliest, most immature thing to say. Schar mitzvah mitzvah, schar avera avera. Mitzvah is a mitzvah and avera is an avera. So if you're not, just because you're not doing 100%, do 10%. Start somewhere. Do 1%. That's also good. Start somewhere. But these 4 things is what causes that. The guy thinks about himself, not about God. He thinks about how it has to happen instantly. It has to happen right there in front of him, and it has to be everything. And once you take those 4 things and live by them, which is an extremely common pitfall, from there life is going to go downhill. There's no chance for it to ever go up. Tu B'Shvat resembles the exact opposite. Literally the exact opposite. He says Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot, the New Year's of trees. So this is a cute story. Amos Bar, in his sefer called Eretz Agadah, he was a secular writer, wrote a story about the beginning of the days of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv existed as a city prior to the state of Israel being considered a state legally or recognized as a state legally. And it was a small city, small streets, the way things were many, many years ago. Tel Aviv is a beach town, but at the same time, if we look at old pictures and whatever, it was a very underdeveloped city, unlike today that it's the big city of Israel. And definitely parks and trees and things like that, meaning natural beauty, wasn't its specialty beyond the waters of the shores. Amos Bar writes in his book that one day the mayor, will call him, of Tel Aviv, hears that he's getting a very, very important guest that's coming to visit, Sir Winston Churchill. And he was embarrassed. On one hand, he was very excited that this great legend is coming to visit his city. But on the other hand, he had some shame, like, what's he going to see? Empty, dusty streets, an underdeveloped city, poverty. What's he going to witness over here? And the way he describes it in the book is he had a meeting with the residents of Tel Aviv and said, Mr. Churchill is coming. The mayor then was, his name was actually Meir Dizengoff. He called the people of the city, had a meeting with them, and he said, what do we do? He's coming, but there's nothing impressive, there's nothing nice. Like, where are we even going to accept him? What's going to be the throughway that he's going to go through? Like, the honor guard, what are we doing for this man? We have to do something to impress him. So they decided that one of the things that they need is a street that looks nice. And in order for a street to look nice, it needs some shrubbery, trees, some basic things. But they don't have any. So they went, and the people of the city volunteered. And they went to a neighboring city that had a lot of forest area. And they undug big trees. And they brought them to Tel Aviv. And to the main street of Tel Aviv, where Mr. Churchill was going to come through for his welcoming, they planted them the night before alongside the street, so it should look like a nice city. A lot of people showed up. This was exciting. You know, back then there was no real excitement, so if a foreigner came to visit, that was a reason for everybody to leave their home. And they crowded the street where Mr. Churchill was coming, and there's only that many people that can fit on a street, and they started overflowing to the sides of the street. And as they started overflowing to the sides of the street, they started pushing each other, and they started bumping into these trees. And as they were bumping into the trees started falling over one after another. Mr. Churchill quickly assessed the situation and was a brilliant man, and understood what had just happened here, looked with a smile to Mr. Meir Dizengoff and told him, I want to teach you a big lesson in life. Something that doesn't have deep roots can never withstand any pressure. Meaning these trees were planted yesterday, uprooted from somewhere else. They're not deeply enrooted in the ground. So of course it can't withstand it. And that's a great lesson for life, and that's why I'm quoting secular sources, because Chochma b'goyim ta'amin. A nation that has no past has no future. A person that's not proud of his childhood, even if it was abusive and hard and troubling, has no future either. Because exactly your scars is what makes you who you are. And exactly your struggles is what can develop you into a greater and stronger person. A person who wants to deny his roots, meaning a Jewish kid who doesn't want to behave in a Jewish way, is one who has no right for existence. And I mean spiritual existence. You're never going to be happy. They'll have everything in the world physically and never be happy. V'hanefesh lo timaleh. Be a constant escape. Because without deeply planted roots, you can't withstand any storm. You can't withstand any pressure at all. Tu B'Shvat comes to teach us an interesting lesson. A tree started by a seed. There was no I. The seed is not the tree. There was no now. The tree doesn't grow overnight. There was no everything. A tree grows in stages. A couple of inches or a couple of feet a year, depending on the nature of a tree. And there was no everything, because there is no everything when it comes to a plant. On the contrary, plants that stay for many years, many times have to be trimmed and adjusted and other things. Exactly the opposite of the four mistakes that we fall into every day. Tu B'Shvat teaches a person, ki ha'adam hu eitz hasadeh. A person is like a tree. What do you mean a person's like a tree? We're the opposite of a tree. I would hope we're a lot more sophisticated than trees. Today they protect trees more than they protect people. But unfortunately, you know, in New York, in New York City, if you break into a store, that's not a crime anymore. But if you cut down a tree, that's actually a serious crime. And that's not an exaggeration. Check what's going on. Do a fact check. But in a normal world, the Torah would come teach us, our rabbis would come tell us, a person is like a tree. Well, that's what they're telling you. If you want to be a person, a real person, understand, you have to plant the seed, you have to take care of it, it takes time, you don't develop into somebody flawless or great instantly, it takes a lot of effort, it takes drastic amounts of nurturing, and never view life as everything or nothing. View life as, let me take the good and try and look away or deal with the negative. Those who wanted everything or nothing ruined their relationships, ruined their friendships, ruined their business associates, ruined their education. You know how many kids dropped out of school because they failed tests? So you failed the test, big deal, move on, who cares, next. Take it again, pass next time. I know somebody who, thank God now he changed his attitude, but had gone through medical school actually pretty well, and then when it came to doing the boards, failed the first time, and told me, maybe I just shouldn't be a doctor. I said, you just put $900,000 and 13 years of your life into this. But I failed the test. I said, you didn't fail the test. You're failing yourself. You were nervous. Anxiety overtook you. I know you're smart. I know you're well prepared. If not, to be a doctor, there's no 99. You have to be 100%. But he's definitely qualifies as the 100% man. And unfortunately, nerves got the best of you. Now you'll test better because you're more equipped, because you deal with the failure. That'll actually be a great success for you, and move on and become something successful. Today actually is one of the most sought after cardiologists in the whole East Coast, maybe even in the United States. It doesn't have to be everything or nothing. It could be just part. And part, a lot of times, is a lot more beautiful than everything. A lot more beautiful than everything. Last week, I used a pasuk. And somebody had asked me what I meant about it, so I want to quote I used an analogy. I didn't quote the pasuk. This week I want to quote the pasuk. I was asked in writing to elaborate. I didn't respond because I'm doing it live. My analogy was a door on a hinge that moves tens of thousands of feet a day but goes nowhere because it's stuck on a hinge. And the question was very simple. Okay, so how do I know I'm not stuck on a hinge, or what do I do to get off of it? So really this analogy wasn't mine, it's a pasuk, it's Mishlei. The pasuk says in Mishlei Perek Chavav pasuk Yudalid, Hadelet tisov al tzira, the door will circulate on its hinge, ve'atzel, and a lazy person, al mitato, on his bed. The amount of people that destroyed their life over wasting it in bed, I don't know if there's a way to count. And mitato doesn't have to only mean, by the way, if you look in the commentaries on the psukim, physically a bed. There are many people that go to work, but they're in bed. Their brain is fried. There are many people that run a whole life, but they're physically active, but they're in bed. They're not advancing anywhere. They're not going anywhere. I said many times in classes that in Poland there's a city that in the cemetery they write the age of a person that died, but they assess the age not based on the amount of physical years they were alive, but based on the amount of time they did something productive. So you can have somebody who was 95, but it says on his grave, lived 3 months. Literally, I visited that cemetery. I'm not sure who's the one who made that decision. You got to be pretty judgmental to be able to decide, but when we go out at night, we call it, we're not going out. We're going into our grave. I'm going to take a night and do nothing productive and do many things that are actually counterproductive. I'm going to escape my own life. That's ve'atzel al mitato, a lazy person who doesn't want to grow, who wants to always stay stuck in the same place. So, how do we overcome that, and how do you know that you're moving forward and not going backwards? So let's take an analogy from the Torah, from the parasha. I think it's very important. If we'll take this to heart in a serious way, you'll walk away with something, maybe even the most important lesson that I've ever given over. The Torah teaches us this week many psukim that seem to be a little bit puzzling. We'll ask a few questions, we'll try and put together an answer, you'll walk away with something nice for Shabbat, and it'll be fun. The Jews are partially out of Egypt, we'll call it. This is before the ocean splits. And then they feel caged in. I know many people in life, in many circumstances, myself included, that's why I said I'm talking to myself, that have ruined valuable things over feeling caged in. Fear of commitment. People can have an unbelievable financial opportunity in the corporate world, but they know it's going to take 2 years of sweating 90 hours a week to climb the ladder. And they just turn it down. And then they justify it. I need a life. And then you analyze 2 years back, when they're 2 years older, what they do at that time. Sunday in the movies, Monday night football, Tuesday night I don't know what, even worse, Wednesday a club, Thursday a bar, Friday sleeping. And that's why you couldn't go work? That was what was so important? That was the life you needed? Unbelievable. I remember a cousin of mine telling me a few months ago about some job that I offered her, which was very high paying. That's crazy. I'm going to have to work so many hours, I won't even have time to go get my nails done. So I told her, let me give you a solution. There's an app called Priv, I think, that's owned by a young Jewish smart kid who they can send you somebody to the office to do your nails for you there. No, that wasn't a paid advertisement. I don't even know if where they operate out of. But, like, really? Okay, so you'll work hard today and you'll have a better tomorrow. That pays off. Hard work pays off. So the Jews they just saw 10 plagues. They just saw God fighting for them and advocating for them in the greatest way. But they feel caged in. They got water in front of them, they got animals, they got other things going on. And what's going to be? And instead of saying, okay, let's figure out a solution, they start complaining. They tell Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't feel alive. You ever heard people say that these days? I don't feel alive. I feel dead inside. That's not a new thing. The Jews told that to Moshe Rabbeinu already. 210 years in hell in Egypt, being treated like animals, not even like humans. They didn't say they feel dead. When suddenly they were treated well, that's when they said they felt dead. That's a Jewish trait, to complain. And they come to Moshe and they tell him, "Mibli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim, are there no graves in Egypt? Lekachtanu lamut b'midbar, you took us out to die in the desert. Halazeh hadavar, this is what we told you, asher dibanu elecha b'Mitzrayim, chadal mimenu v'na'avdat Mitzrayim, leave us alone, we'll work for Egypt. Ki tov lanu avodat Mitzrayim imutenu b'midbar." Mitzrayim, Chazal teach us. Can somebody close the door? Because somebody upstairs seems like he has a lot to talk about, and I'm not interested in it. Doesn't seem intelligent based on the tone either. Thank you. Hamibli ein kvarim b'Mitzrayim. There are no graves in Egypt. Chazal teaches a very interesting thing. Mitzrayim is a country, right? Egypt. But Mitzrayim also means borders, Meitzarim. Everybody has their own self-created borders in life of the things that they don't believe they can do or accomplish, of the battles they think they can't win, of a long list of other things where you get the gist. And then we say, I feel dead inside. This is just history repeating itself. Happened before the Jews were even a nation. We were already there. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, Al tirau, don't worry. Yeshuat Hashem is going to come. And Hashem yilachem lachem, God's going to fight for you. Va'atem tacharishun, and stay quiet, don't complain. Don't worry, don't complain. Hashem's response to all of this is very interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu's praying, the Jewish nation's praying, right? The pasuk says earlier, Vayirumo, they were very scared, and what they do? Vayitzaku bnei Yisrael el Hashem. They cried out to God. What were we taught since we were young children? If you have a problem, talk to God. He's going to help you. Pray. So they did the most perfect thing, right? They had a problem and they prayed. And what does Hashem say? Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, ma titzak elai. What are you praying for? Daber el bnei Yisrael v'yisau. Tell the Jews to go. Go where? Into the water. Go into the water. That's my response to all those who say, I feel like I'm drowning in my life. The whole Jewish nation was built on drowning. If there wasn't Nachshon ben Aminadav that went up to here, Shomreini el ki higiu mayim ad nafesh, there wouldn't be Am Yisrael. Drowning is not a problem. Drowning is by design. That's a good thing. That's what makes us who we are. That's what makes us a nation. But when do we see, and what does this mean? Why would Hashem do that? Am Yisrael is talking to him. Chazal teaches HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitaveh. He yearns, he desires, he waits l'tfilatam shel tzadikim, for the prayer of the righteous. So he has their prayers, they're praying. So ma titzak elai, stop praying? It's interesting. You have to understand this. This is one of the hard questions in the Torah. There's many complicated sugyot in the Chumash. This is probably on the top 2 or 3 hard ones to explain. No, at the end it worked out, all right? They had a miracle, let's just say. In a miracle that brought a lot of praise, Az Yashir, and whatever. Many people are going to come to shul this week to get the Aliyah of Az Yashir. In Kabbalah, in level of importance of Aliyot on Shabbat, so Shishi is considered the most important, and Shlishi, and whatever the orders are. Reb Nachman used to get Revi'i. Reb Nachman was a great Kabbalist. In Breslov, the rabbis get Revi'i. And it's interesting because according to the Ari, Revi'i is the least important Aliyah. So maybe Maftir less even, but if you eliminate the blessing factor, Revi'i, and there's all different explanations why he picked to get Revi'i, either because of humility, he didn't want to be like the one who takes the best. There are all different explanations. I once heard a sharp thing, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's still a sharp line. The Aliyah of Az Yashir is Revi'i. He said it was worth it for him to get Revi'i all year, that on Bishalach he should get Az Yashir. He should get the Aliyah of Az Yashir. But anyway, it worked out for them somehow. Miracles, water splitting in the whole world. We have a whole celebration, Passover coming up over. Things worked out. You would think after it all worked out, they'd be happy, no? You have it good. You're protected. Hashem told you didn't even have to pray. Stop praying and everything's good. And immediately they started complaining again. Moshe takes them, guides them from Yam Suf. They went to the desert, V'lo matzu mayim, and they didn't find water. Vayevou marata v'lo yachlu lishtot mayim ki marim hem. They came to Marata, they couldn't drink the water because it was bitter. Al Kain Karash Ma Mara, it was so bitter that's why they named the place that. And what they do? Vayilonu ha'am al Moshe leimor ma nishteh. And they complained to Moshe Rabbeinu, what are we going to drink? I have a very simple question. If a 3-year-old child goes to his mother and says, at 7 o'clock in the morning, I woke up an hour ago, I'm starving, I didn't eat since 6 p.m. last night. Is that a complaint? No, it's a very valid request. Food is the most fundamental thing in the world. Water is more critical to the human body than food. In a desert where it's a hot temperature, it's even more critical. They were in the desert and they needed water to drink. Why is it called Vayilonu? They complained. They didn't complain, they asked. They wanted water. The water was bitter, it wasn't drinkable, contaminated water. And they came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, what are we going to drink? So Allah doesn't say that. It says, Vayilonu. They complained to Moshe Rabbeinu, Manishteh, what are we going to drink? Why is it called a complaint? So just remember the questions. We'll try and put together a puzzle. I don't know the answers myself yet. I'm piecing it together as we're going along. But at the end, hopefully, Hashem will give us the Shema, we'll figure it out. No, so then Moshe Rabbeinu prays. This time, Hashem doesn't tell him not to pray. He lets him pray. Vayitzak el Hashem, Christ Hashem. Hashem shows him a branch, a tree, a branch, and he tells him, throw it into the water. He throws it into the water, vayimteku hamayim, no more contaminated. Today we call it UV treatment. Killed all the bacteria, the water's fine. Sham sam lo chok u'mishpat, v'sham nisahu. Rashi HaKadosh writes, Sham sam lo chok u'mishpat, b'mara natan lehem miktzat parshiyot shel Torah. In this place called Mara, he gave them part of the laws of the Torah, shitasku b'hem, that they should have what to learn. Shabbat, the mitzvah of Shabbat, and Para Aduma. That's based on Mechilta. And a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf, Nun Vav Amud Bet. Okay, so let's analyze this a second. They didn't have water, they were called complainers. This time Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish nation scream out to God, and God doesn't tell them to stay quiet, meaning now we suddenly could pray. Before they couldn't pray, now they could pray. He gives them a tree, a branch. The branch goes into the water. Somehow the water becomes sweet. And then God's response to the whole episode is giving them 2 mitzvot, Shabbat and Para Aduma. V'sham nisau. What does Rashi write? There he tested them, la'am, to the nation, v'ra'ak she'opam, and he saw how stubborn they are. Shelo nimlechu b'Moshe b'lashon yafa. Listen to the words of Rashi, and you have an answer to the question we asked before. How did Hashem assess that they were stubborn? Because they didn't speak to Moshe when they told him about their water in a nice way. This is where the Torah teaches us a big lesson for life. It's not what you say. You can say very harsh things to somebody when they have to hear it, because sometimes that's the biggest favor in the world you can do for them. If a doctor comes to somebody and says, honey bunch, you have a clogged artery, I think it might be a good idea to get into the emotional state to get it unclogged. He's not a doctor, he's a murderer, because the person's not going to take him seriously, and he's going to drop dead. But if the doctor comes to somebody and says, dude, it ain't a joke. You got a couple of days, you have a heart attack, you're dead. Now go under the knife tomorrow, even though you're scared, and we'll save your life. We'll fix your clogged artery. That's a legitimate doctor. Now maybe you should do it in a gentle way with bedside manner and calm him down and tell him that people live through it and people survive and have a long, healthy life afterwards. But yeah, there are points in life that you have to say things as they are. The Torah teaches you it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. Water was a critical need. Nobody agrees with that. Why is it considered complaining? But not only complaining to the point that God says, now I learned that you're a stubborn nation, because they didn't tell it to Moshe Rabbeinu nicely. Even if you have the most critical need in your life, food, water, oxygen, the most basic things, that still doesn't justify not behaving in a dignified manner. I don't care how desperate you are, what situation you're in, hold your dignity. Speak politely. Speak nicely. But why did Hashem give them dafka these two mitzvot, Shabbat and Parah Aduma? Of course, there's more serious pshatim than what we're going to come out with over here, that the Sfarim wrote. But Parah Aduma is a mitzvah that, right, Amarti Chakma v'hi rechoka mimeni, is one of those that doesn't make sense. Shabbat is one of the mitzvot that, on one hand, part of it makes a lot of sense. Right? Chinuch explains, others explain, everybody understands that the human body needs rest. A person's not a work machine forever. There are many studies, but this is an interesting study. I'm not here encouraging any bad habits or talking halakha l'maaseh. Everybody should consult with their local rabbi. But just to show you an interesting thing, these studies obviously are done in Israel by the Bar Ilan University, which is the only university that will be willing to even do studies about quality of life and length of life and whatever. So there's an interesting halakha question that was raised already many, many years ago by Moshe Feinstein and Nigrot Moshe. There are many yeshiva boys that have a habit that's not so healthy. I had it myself, so I understand where it comes from. Normally social pressure, called smoking. Cigarettes I'm talking about. I know today that people are confused when you say smoking what you mean, so let's stay real. Now, we know medically that smoking is extremely unhealthy. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, v'nishmartem ma'od lenafshotechem, you have to watch your health. So how is it, al pi halacha, okay to smoke? It's not. But many Gdolei Yisrael smoked, and until today many Gdolei Yisrael smoke. Huge Talmidei Chachamim. So what, they're going against the halacha? For sure not. Pasuk in the Torah, not mitzvah d'oraita. So Moshe writes an interesting thing, Shomer p'taim Hashem. Hashem watches over fools. It's an addiction or whatever, and Hashem watches over it. I'm not sure how that makes a mutter. What does that mean? So if that's the case, you could do drugs too. Shomer p'taim Hashem, right? Where's the line? I don't know. I never understood what that meant. But that's what he writes. The Maaseh is a serious question. It was addressed by many. I'm not here to encourage smoking. Let's make that clear. I stopped myself. We'll make that clear as well. But I still want to be objective from an intellectual perspective because I think there's something to apply in other areas in life. The criteria in halacha, v'nishmartem od lenafshotechem, is something that scientifically was proven beyond reasonable doubt to harm you, you're not allowed to do or be affiliated with. Something that some think may harm you, you are. Now, smoking has been proven beyond reasonable doubt to harm you. That's not argued. But there's an interesting thing. Bar Ilan did a study in Israel on lung cancer patients that they attribute to a link of smoking. Israelis smoke on a much higher percentage than Americans do. And they found an interesting phenomenon, that people that keep Shabbat are drastically, by insane numbers, less frequent to get lung cancer. But we're talking about off-the-chart numbers. I don't remember the exact numbers, that's why I'm not quoting, but you can look this up online and see the exact details. And they didn't have a real explanation for it. They ended up concluding that being that Shabbat is 24 hours plus an hour before and an hour after, more or less, with the Shkia and Seit HaKochavim and all that, and all the from candlelighting till 72 for those who keep Rabbeinu Tam or whatever, so let's say about 25 to 6 hours. that a person at least that much doesn't smoke, the time that the lungs have to recuperate prevents them getting lung cancer later on. Now again, I'm stressing, I don't want no moms calling me, now my son's going to smoke because of you and this and that. You cannot smoke, it's not healthy, it's a bad habit, all right? We're done? Great. Now let's go back to the point. After they wrote this thing, this theory, they decided they're going to take it a step further. And they're going to do general research of general health of people that observe Shabbat and people that don't observe Shabbat. Now that's a very unfair study, because in the Haredi world we have many things that by nature we do much less healthy than people that are not Haredi. The vast majority of the Haredi world doesn't go to the gym, for example. Fitness is a critical element of staying healthy in life, either because they can't afford it or because they're Torah scholars that are learning and they think it's a waste of time for them, or a long list of other reasons. So really it's a very unfair study, because maybe whatever the conclusion is, it really shouldn't be balanced. The general Haredi Jewish family that's not financially comfortable, just because of financial restraints, their diet is much less healthy. They can't afford organic foods. It's 4 times the cost. So of course, people that put in pesticides are going to have more medical issues than people that don't. And the list goes on. Despite all of that, they still found that those who observe Shabbat have a much longer lifespan on average with less medical complications along the way. And this is not a blessing of keeping Shabbat. It's when a person has time to detach from everything, the body can actually heal itself. So despite not living as healthy of a lifestyle, the mind is the strongest part of your physical health. Right? People that have anxiety end up getting a long list of medical issues, from strokes to cardio issues to gastro issues and a long list of others that there's the direct links to. A person has Shabbat, shuts down the world, shuts out the world, has family time, spends time with people he loves, rests, just physical rest, eats properly, because now there's time, we're not racing to the office or back or on the phone or this or that. He's going to be a healthier person. Now, of course, some wisecrack's going to send me a message tomorrow. I know a guy was religious and died when he was 30. Guess what? Yeah, I'll say it as it is. My brother was 31, died of cancer. Now what? We're talking about the bigger picture. Meaning, that's the part that of Shabbat is very easy to rationalize. It makes a lot of sense to have a day of rest. This is a very common thing in the world. In America, they have Sunday, and the Muslims have Friday, and most of the world has a day off, we'll call it. A day of some version of a break. But then there's a part of Shabbat that doesn't make sense. According to the halakha, people always ask this in secular settings of lectures. Shabbat makes no sense. Why can't I turn on a light? Shabbat's a day of rest. So I should be comfortable in having a light on and off, on when I want it and off when I don't want it. That's the way I'm going to sleep better. Very common. I hear this all the time. And they don't mean it out of a place of spite. It's a very innocent, pure question. They want to understand. They got it all wrong. Shabbat's not a day of rest. Shabbat's a day of emulating God stopping creation. When you turn on a light, you close a circuit, you're creating something. And that's why, al pi halacha, if you decide you want to pick up a chair 500 times on Shabbat, no problem. There's nothing restful about that. That might be fitness, I don't know, uncomfortable fitness. But if you want to turn on a light, that's all it is. You're not allowed to do it. And that's the part of Shabbat that doesn't make sense to people. Because Baruch Hu came to the Jews and said, you know why you complained? Because things didn't add up for you. And when it didn't make sense, you lost it, and as a result, you started talking to Moshe Rabbeinu in a vulgar way. If you would have realized that it's okay when life doesn't make sense. Who said everything has to make sense? What's wrong if it doesn't? On the contrary, people are able to smile despite things not adding up or making sense to them, have a much more pleasant life. All the overthinkers that are processing things are depressed, miserable souls. It's really like that. Of course, we have to give thought to our actions before we do them and whatever, but people can really destroy their life over thinking and thinking. It's not healthy. That's, by the way, why statistically many people with very high IQs are drastically more prone to depression than people that are a lot less smart, we'll just say in a polite way. Because they utilize their intelligence for the wrong things, for overanalyzing things on a very regular basis. Because Baruch Hu comes to Am Yisrael and says, you want to stop complaining, you want to stop being negative, the first thing you got to do is be willing to accept mitzvot that don't add up to you. Be willing to accept a fact for a fact the way it is and follow. Just because I said so. And that takes a lot of discipline, and discipline is something that doesn't come easily. You would think that with that lesson they were done complaining, no? The Jews continue, the Torah says, now they're complaining about food. Wait a second, you just had an issue with the water, it was solved perfectly. It was solved in a way that's not logical. They took a branch, they stuck it into the water, and now the water's okay. A branch is more bitter than the water. And that's exactly what Hashem wanted to show the Jewish nation. No, it doesn't have to add up. But they didn't learn, lesson not learned, we're going to make the same mistake again. And there's nothing wrong with that. People are entitled to make mistakes multiple times. That's just the human nature. So Hashem says He's giving them man, best option of food that could be, aka kosher food, no kashrus questions from God Himself, God's Hechsher Himself. Michelin quality food, tastes like anything you want. You got it all made. As perfect as could be. But again, they're complaining. They want meat, they want this doesn't work, that doesn't work. It's like the very famous thing, I can't keep kosher because they don't make steak with butter and you can't get to the right texture. They forget that in just a few years when they're going to be in the grave, the worms don't care if the steak you ate was with butter or not. We all end up in the same place anyway, who cares? But that's a common thing that you hear today. So again, they're complaining or whatever. And here Hashem already got a little bit tougher with them. And He says, yeah, you're going to get whatever you want. And simply put, oh yeah, you want it, you'll get it. But He tells them an interesting thing. Erev yidatem, in the evening you'll know, ki Hashem hotzi etchem miMitzrayim, that God took you out of Egypt. What do you mean, they didn't know? They just went out. I'm skipping a few words. Uboker uritem et kvod Hashem, and in the morning you'll see God's glory. B'teit Hashem lachem ba'erev basar le'echol, when God gives you in the evening meat to eat, ve'lechem and bread ba'boker lisboa, in the morning to feel full. This is what the pasuk says. So, in a sefer called Livyat Chen, which I quoted from last week as well, he brings down, it's not his, he brings it down, a beautiful pshat on this. In life, a person has different situations. Times that are dark, things aren't working out, and times that are full of light. Feels good, wake up in a good mood, happy, things are working out, doing well. Erev is night, that resembles dark times. Boker is day, that resembles the good times in life. So he makes an observation. If we look at the pasuk, it says Erev at night, vidatem, and you will know. But by boker in the morning, it says uritem, and you will see. Why did Torah use two different words? Should have said Erev vidatem, boker vidatem, or Erev uritem. Why by the Erev we said vidatem, and you will know. By the boker we said uritem, and you will see. So he says an unbelievable pshat. He says we have the answer from this from our prayers every day in Shacharit and Arvit. Listen to a beautiful pshat, you're going to love this. In Shacharit, we say, Emet v'yatziv v'nachon v'kayam v'yashar, and so on. God is true, and the God of just and righteous, and at night, like after Kriyat Shema, right? They're both Birkot Kriyat Shema. One is the Birkot Kriyat Shema of the morning, one is the Birkot Kriyat Shema of the night. We say, Ve'emunah kol zot v'kayam aleinu. Faith is everything we have. Why in the morning do we say Emet v'yatziv v'nachon, such a strong proclamation, and at night suddenly it becomes a faith matter? He says that's pshat. When everything's going right at night, when it's morning, meaning when a person's in a light stage of his life, Yemei Ha'or, as Rav Nachman calls it, and everything's working out well for him, it's very easy to say, Emet v'yatziv v'nachon. That's why we say it. See Hashem clearly. Everything I do, Hashem's with me. Touch dust, it becomes gold, like Avraham Avinu. Through dust, it became swords. It fought his battles for him. But sometimes in life, everything is going wrong. The world's against me. The people that I loved most betrayed me. The people that I worked hardest for don't acknowledge me. Everything goes wrong. My mood is bad. I'm anxious. I'm sad. I'm angry. I have so many emotions going on at once that I can't even grasp control of my own emotions. Then Hashem says, "Ve'emunah kol zot." Now we're going to see if you have faith. But you say, "I'm not there yet. Well, God's doing this to me, so there's no way I'm going to keep mitzvot." Right? There are two types of people. My grandfather that were giving this class for his refuah shlema survived World War II and then became a very big Talmid Chacham and a wealthy businessman. Other people did the opposite extreme. They threw religion away in the farthest way. Some people walked away and said, because of the hell I was through, I saw God. And other people walked away and said, because of the hell I was through, there can't be a God. I was privileged to be a grandson of one of those who said, because of the hell I was through, I saw God. That's what we say at night. When it's Laila, when it's Choshech, when it resembles the darkness of life, Ve'emunah kol zot, there's the faith. And Mela, based on this, that's the pshat in the pasuk. This is such a beautiful pshat, I love it. Erev vidatem ki yotzi Hashem. At night, when things aren't going right, you'll know that Hashem took you out of Mitzrayim. It'll be knowledge, but that's where it'll end. Uboke, but when things work out for you better and it's light, and life is happier, uritem, and you'll see. It won't just be knowledge. It'll be v'yatziv, v'anachon, v'kayam, v'yashar. You'll see it as clear as could be. Then you'll see Kvod Hashem. You'll see the Yeshuat Hashem in all the situation. Now, I want to read to you vaguely a quote from a sefer called Sharei Dat that was written by the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz in the chapter that's called Yisurim Shel Ahava, who writes something that's going to be a little bit hard to accept. If we ask a 15-year-old today, what does he want in life? He's going to say, an easy life. Have it easy in school, make money, this, that, everything should work out, an easy life. Right? That's what he's going to say. Is he right or wrong? I think he's right, no? It makes sense. It's not. It would be nice for everybody to have an easy life, no? Listen to his words. I'm quoting word for word because it's a little hard to digest. Ma umlala adam. How empty, how pitiful is a person. Shavru alav kol yamav v'tova. That had an easy life. Umlal is like the lowest level. It's like empty, nothing, zero. Because a person has one or two choices in life, he writes. O shu chasar dat v'chayv b'dimayon. If all his life was good, either he has no brains and a big imagination, so he just lived in one big lie and fantasy that his life is great. O shu pashut malach, or he's an angel. An angel's not a human, so that's also not a compliment. An angel's just a robot. Somebody who lives in this world has to be realistic. This is a world that has in it void and darkness. A world that our goal is to bring pride to God, dafka, through the darkness. The people that walked away from the war and said, because of what I saw, I'm even closer to God. Every time, I hope none of you ever have a hard day, but let's be real, as I started the class. My life is hard because I'm in it, your life is hard because you're in it, that's the way it works. Every time you're having a bad day, remember these words from the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz. Ma'umlal ha'adam, how empty, how nothing is a person that wants the good life, that everything should be good. That's not the purpose of life. Adarabah, the purpose of life is just the opposite. And then he continues to go on and say, he says, a lot of times you ask somebody, how you doing? And he says, not so good. His words are ghali, it's bad. And he said, great. Those are the best conditions to serve God in. What could be better? Adarabah, that's how you prove your loyalty. You don't prove your loyalty to somebody when everything's easy. That's no big deal. You prove your loyalty to somebody when everything's hard. And by the way, Hashem says that clearly. I reward a person. A reward is not only Gan Eden. It's how much Hashem values a person. It's based on how hard it is for him. Some people, it comes Friday night, they have no Yetzer Hara to go on their phone. They go to shul, they sing L'cha Dodi, they enjoy it, they have a good time, they come home, they eat the meal, go to sleep, and it's beautiful. They'll get a lot of schar for keeping Shabbos, but that's where it'll end. The other people, it comes Friday night, and they're not lucky to be in a good family setting or whatever it is, and they're lonely and they're bored, and they feel like they're dying. And for them not to take the phone is Mesiras Nefesh. It sounds crazy, but it's true. We love our phones more than our kids and our spouses and everybody. Let's not lie about it. That's the fact. If somebody's missing his phone, he panics way more than if his child's not there. Way more. I've seen it time and time again. I wish it was a joke. And for that person, when he's all alone, not to take the phone, his gut is coming out. His neshama is coming out of him. The Yetzer Hara is screaming, you can't! Hashem doesn't expect it from you. That Yetzer Hara fooled me many times as a young kid. And then it wasn't the cell phone era, it was in other things. You're not capable. God will be happier for you to be happy. That's what the Yetzer Hara used to tell me. I remember that stupid statement as a teenager in my head thousands of times. God will be happier if you'll be happy. Guess what? He never wrote that disclaimer. On the contrary. He said, God will be happier if you'll show him that despite you not being happy, you're still loyal. And don't betray him over your mood swing today. Now again, I'm not giving Musa, I'm giving Musa to myself. You happen to hear it because I'm crazy and I talk out loud. But I'm not righteous and I have no right to give anybody Musa. So on one hand, we just read from, I quoted word for word, from the tells Rosh Shiva that it seems like struggling in life is a good thing. On the other hand, Lichora is just the opposite, right? The Navi Yeshaya in Perek Samech Gimel says, B'chol tzaratam lo tzar, lo with a vav, not lo with an aleph. And all your suffering, Hashem suffering with you. Right? The Gemara says, on that pasuk in Sanhedrin Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph, She'adam mitzta'er, at the time that a person suffers, Shechina ma lashon omeret, what does Hashem say? Kalani miroshi, kalani mizroi. Hashem suffering physically, he says. His head, his arm, whatever that means, all parables, obviously. Because Hashem doesn't have a body, but in order for us to relate to it, the Gemara says. So, wait a second. Are you a nothing if you never suffer in life? Or are you causing God suffering by suffering in life? Which one is it? Besides, Hashem doesn't want to bring suffering on himself, so why does he allow anybody to suffer? If he suffers with you, then why does he allow anybody to suffer? These are all questions that have no end, by the way. I'm just bringing out little points through them. You know, the answer is, Achai v're'ai, I'm giving you an eitzah for life. And that's the difference between a person who lives on a hinge and a person who doesn't. Everybody's going to move. Everybody's going to struggle. Everybody's going to suffer. Everybody's going to have better days and worse days. I'm not being a pessimist. You can have a lot of amazing days and hopefully they'll be the vast majority of your life. But there will be hard times. That's just the way it is. There's no greater gift to a person than having a child, than bringing life to the world. But labor is a very unpleasant experience. Meaning some of the greatest things in life happen through hardship. There's no greater gift than a person being in love, but love hurts. When you love somebody, every little thing can irk you. Definitely when you're shallow. And the same thing in everything in life. There's no greater thing than being well educated. But education takes a lot of discipline and self-sacrifice. And that's why the majority of people in the world aren't educated. And then the list goes on. Meaning the birth of anything positive comes through a lot of pain. So everybody's going to have a certain amount of pain in life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us like this. Now choose how you want that pain. You were allocated X amount of suffering throughout your life. That suffering could be that you have a big test to use your phone Friday night and you beat it. That suffering could be that today you're not in the mood of putting on tefillin, or you forgot your tefillin at home and now you have to go find somebody who has one that's going to lend it to you, and you're going to go out in the cold and spend 2 hours looking just not to miss tefillin today. Your suffering could be that you're dying to walk out in jeans, but instead you'll walk out in a skirt because that's what God said. Or your suffering could be that you'll suffer from anxiety and depression. Pick which version of suffering you want. Hashem says, "Bechol tzaratam lo tzar." When you're suffering, I'm suffering. You know why I'm suffering? Because you didn't have to suffer like this. I pity your choice. You could have chose to do the right thing and you wouldn't be suffering like this. You could have chose to allocate your suffering into effort in other things. We're reading the Parashiyot of leaving Egypt. The Zohar Kadosh writes that Shevet Levi didn't suffer in Egypt. They were privileged. A whole tribe in Israel, 10%. A whole tribe of the Jewish nation, 10% of the Jewish nation almost. They're not slaves. They don't have to work. The Egyptians don't beat them, don't kill their kids. All the horrific things that happen. Comes the Zohar and says, what do you mean? But there was a decree on the Jewish nation that they had to be exiled and suffer for 210 years. So how did Shevet Levi get away with it? The Zohar writes that they got away with it because they did suffer in a different way. Instead of chomer and levinim, they were doing kal v'chomer v'libun halacha. They worked very, very hard, just in a different way. They studied. Sitting in front of a book for 12 hours a day is no easy thing. I think I said this a couple of months ago in a class, that in one of my interactions with one of these clowns that was angry why yeshiva boys don't go to the army in Israel, so I made him a deal that for every boy he gives me that goes to yeshiva, I'll give him one boy that'll go to the army. We still didn't find one volunteer yet. Because deep down they all know that it's a lot harder to sit and learn than to be in the military. And I'm saying that as one who's done both. So I know that on my own flesh and blood. My dear friends, let's remember this. Every time we didn't make a bracha is one more time that we're going to suffer in somewhere else. Not because of a punishment. No, God doesn't punish nobody. He loves everybody. In today's generation, we're all anusim. There's no nothing. There's no Gehenna, no nothing. We're all going straight to Gan Eden. That's not even a question. Just because, why did you make a bracha? Because it was hard for you. So you try to escape suffering. So now you're going to suffer somewhere else. Wouldn't it be better to suffer and bring nachat ruach to Hashem, to do Hashem's will, and you'll have olam hazeh and olam haba? Wouldn't it be better to struggle, but to have meaning in life, to have purpose, to be here for a reason? And what's another trap that we fall into? I'm a spiritual person. I can't count how many times a week I hear that stupid statement. I want to understand what it means to be a spiritual person. That you do yoga, that you meditate, that you do drugs. What is it to be? You take psychedelics. What makes you spiritual? I want to understand what it is. If there's Hashem, He wrote what spiritual is. And if there's no Hashem, spirituality doesn't exist by definition, just from a scientific perspective even. So I don't care about your spirituality. Spirituality is just a nice fantasy of a way of excusing life and being a degenerate. Let's talk practical. Imagine you come into a restaurant, you order a whole bunch of food, nothing comes, they bring you a bill. He said, what are you billing for me for? The food they didn't serve you? He said, the chef had a good heart. He really meant to cook you the food. I don't think you're going to pay that bill, right? I would hope not, at least. That's all the spiritual people in the world. I have such a good connection with God. I said, guess what? You don't. I'll break you the news. Connections take two. And He doesn't have a good connection with you right now. Because you don't want to be connected with Him on His terms, and He's the boss. And you never pick a battle with somebody who's bigger and stronger than you, because you're going to lose. That's just simple logic that even a 1-year-old understands. And this goes on and everything in life, by the way. There's no end to this concept. There's an unbelievable quote from the Sfas Emes, Zechet Tzadik Livracha, Zechutah Yagen Aleinu. And based on this, Sfas Emes explains the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Perek Gimel. The Sfas Emes says, Et hanisyonot, the tests, Hashem noten, God gives. Et hatzarot, But the problems and the suffering, ha'adam mevi al atzmo, a person brings on himself. You hear this? Et hanisyonot, your tests in life, that Hashem gave you. But your suffering, your problems, that you gave yourself. That has nothing to do with God. For years, I didn't understand this Fasemis. What does this mean? A person got sick, know what he brought on himself? You know what this Fasemis is saying? If you would have passed your nisyonot, you wouldn't have the tzarot, because you would have already suffered then. When you have a test, it's very hard to pass it. Sometimes somebody tells you something and you want to spew back hate, and it's on the tip of your tongue, and you have a sharp tongue, and you could mop the floors with them. And you're fighting, and it's coming out, and it's like a war going on inside. I know, I experienced it many times. And you stay quiet. You just paid your debt of struggle in this world. And tomorrow you're going to feel better. And besides, tomorrow you'll also feel better because you'll realize you're a mensch and you accomplished something in life. And you're in control of your own actions, your own behavior. And other times you say things that shouldn't be said. And tomorrow you feel like this. And the next day you feel sad. You know why you feel sad? Because you didn't care to do the nisayon. So now you have the tzara. And I stress, this is not a punishment. I don't threaten Gehenna and this and that. I'll tell you clearly. We're all going straight to Gan Eden. In this generation, everybody's anusim. That's not the subject. I'm talking about Gan Eden in this world. That today we should be happy. With this Fasemis explains an unbelievable thing. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, Paragim of Mishnah Hey, if somebody accepts upon himself the yoke of Torah, ma'avirim imenu, they take away from him all malchut v'ol derech eretz, the yoke of the government and the yoke of the burdens of the ways of life. So this Fasemis explains, and he says, he gives an interesting example of the analogies from tzedakah. He says sometimes a person, business slows down by him. So what's the first thing that he cuts back on? Charity. He says, you know what's going to happen? He's going to make even less money. Hashem's giving him a test to see if he's going to continue giving tzedakah or not. And now he failed the test. So if he didn't want to suffer the test, so he's going to give him tzaros. He's going to lose all his money. He said, but if somebody's business slowed down and now he gives more tzedakah, so now he's going to stop making money. And I tell you a very personal story. I never shared this before with anybody in my life, including my own family. I've been rich and poor more than once in my life. Literally very wealthy and literally very poor. The second time I went bust in business, and there's a pasuk that says the third time should never happen. So let's hope from here on it'll stay wealthy. But the second time I went bust, I didn't have a dollar. Nothing. Debt and problems and headaches. And of course, I didn't expose my family to it. I made sure that they had whatever they needed, but it was all through stress and complications and a few good friends that cared. And I remember walking into a bakery one morning, and I had $3 in my pocket. The bank shut my credit cards down, obviously, because they picked up on my financial situations. And that was enough to buy a bagel. They had a $2.99 special for a bagel and a coffee, and that was going to be breakfast that morning. It was literal, not an exaggeration. And on the line in front of me was an Israeli mishulach, Israeli collecting guy, that bought something for breakfast, and he came to pay, and it seems like he was short some money. And I had not ordered yet, and I saw the situation. And I heard the guys telling him in English, but he wasn't understanding, so I translated it to him. He needs $3 more. He has to pay $3 more. The guy tells me in Hebrew to say back that that's all he has, so maybe he should take off some of the food. So the store guy, the worker, gets angry and he says, "What do you mean take off? We already put it on a tray. We have to throw it out. You got to pay me." And I remember this like today. I stuck my hand in my pocket. I took the $3 and I said, "I'll be fine. I'm not going to starve today. I have food at home. I'll go figure my life out." And I gave it to the Israeli guy. I said, "Tenlo shishto, give it to him so he should be quiet." That afternoon, an old business acquaintance of mine called me up and said, "I heard you closed your company down and you ran into some problems. What are you wasting your life for? I got a new gig for you." Bli ayin hara. Mekimi me'afar dal, from the dumps of the world, me'ashpot yarim evyon. Bli ayin hara, Hashem should help further. Unbelievable. Hashem gave me the last test. Will you give up on your last $3 to save somebody else from a discomfort or not? I passed it. And today, when people ask me for tzedakah, I panic inside that maybe I'm not giving enough because I never want to be back in that situation again. I want to stay wealthy, B'ezrat Hashem. And yeah, take whatever, who cares? I don't even look like whatever. To me, if there's no money in my checking account, that's not a problem. If there is money, I feel guilty because somebody else needs it a lot more than me. So why is it in my account? I don't own a savings account, and I'm very proud of it. Never did, never will. Not my thing. I have money. Somebody else needs it more than me. Oh Hashem, I have an empire. Doing very well. I'm not saying most people are not allowed to live like that. This is not public advice. But the concept, I'm telling you from my own personal experience, when you're in the dumps, you're flat on your face, you don't even know where you're going to buy your next lunch from, your next bagel from, and you're willing to give up your last $3, that's when God says, all right, now I'm going to make you the next success story of the world. And it's like that in every area in life. I'll tell you a very recent story. Somebody called me a girl, she's, let's just say there was some struggles along the way, trying to find we'll call it a shidduch, I don't like that term so much, but whatever. Trying to build a nice Jewish home. And she dated a guy, after many years of struggles and other things that went along the way. The guy was a really good guy, and it looked like it was going to work out, but the guy, let's just say the guy didn't have the merit to marry such a tzaddikus. That's the way I view the story. And after a couple of months, he dumped her. And she was shattered. She called me crying and this and that. There was a lot of pain there. Pain that was intolerable, to the point that I put her on hold a few times because I had to catch my own breath. I couldn't hear so much pain in a person in one shot. It's just not bearable to hear. And at the end she said, I didn't call it to vent, even though it sounds like it. I didn't call it to say I'm angry, even though it sounds like it. I called because you're grounded to intellect. Give me a solution that A, I should find the right one, and B, this shouldn't happen to me again. My instinct was to say, oh my God. It says clearly in Chazal, Hashem makes shidduch. What do you want from me? I don't know. Sometimes Hashem puts crazy ideas into my head and I say things that I shouldn't. I said, I have a solution. She said, what's the solution? I said, set him up with somebody else. She said, who? I said, the guy that just dumped you. I said, what are you, crazy? Really? I said, yeah, you said he's a good guy. That's why you're so upset. So, for you it wasn't meant, but for somebody else it is meant. Set him up. Kids, of course, the conversation didn't end so friendly, let's just say. It ended with an abrupt click, and fine, it is what it is. A few days went by, and I started feeling guilty. I should have not said that. Why do I say stupid things all the time? Control yourself, this, that. So I reached out and I said, I'm sorry if I wasn't sensitive. And so what do you mean wasn't sensitive? It was the greatest idea ever. Here's a person who hung up on me. What's the greatest idea? I'm talking about 3 days later. I reached out. I said I wasn't capable of calling the guy after what happened. But I reached out to his sister and I said, listen, I have a friend. I think she's the right one for him. And I don't know if they're dating or not, but I tried. I made the effort. So the same day that I did that, which was the day after we had this conversation, my brother-in-law comes home from work and tells my sister, you won't believe this. I've got a new client in my law firm who's a big real estate shark and successful, ben Torah. He says, we were in a meeting, he walked out in the middle because he says he learns the daf and he watches it live on one of these shiurim and he doesn't want to miss. And he's paying hundreds of dollars an hour to lawyers, so he's paying them for the time that they're wasting while he's learning the daf yomi. So and for some weird reason, he never got married. Maybe it's a good idea for your sister. So then I went on a first date. And I think there might be a shot at it. And yes, there is a happy ending to the story. They are engaged now. I'll be doing the wedding shortly, Be'ezrat Hashem. What's pshat in that? Hashem said there's X amount of suffering that this person has to go through. Then he gave her the craziest test in the world. Guy led her on for 2 months, then dumped her. I said, don't be an idiot. Be a hero. You make that guy's life better despite that you should hate his guts. Be a real hero. And now you passed the test, that's it. No nisayon, no tzara. What's the difference between people who get somewhere and people who don't get anywhere? HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Ma titzak elai. What's it going to help all your prayers? The whole idea of this is that they should do something about it. They're being tested. Let them pass the test. The test is to believe that if I was able to take them this far, I can get them further. Go into the water, move. And that's why, even though normally Hashem is desperate for our prayers, but one time in history, he had to teach the Jewish nation, it's not all about lip service, it's about, action. Go show V'Yisrael that you're going to do something about it. Go pass your test, your personal test, and then you won't drown in the ocean anymore. It looked like Nachshon was going to drown, no? I'm drowning. But exactly at that moment, the Jewish nation was born. The ocean split, the world saw. This is my God who I praise. And forever and ever we have a Shabbat. It's called Shabbat Shirah. The Shabbat that we praise. All over passing a test. You know what the greatest test in life is? Is not to stay stuck on a hinge. Who's a person who's stuck on a hinge? Who thinks he's doing a lot. But when things are hard, cons out. This is too hard. This is something I can't live up to. This is not for me. This, I'm not on that level yet. All the excuses. I heard all the excuses in the book already. And guess what? I didn't have to hear them. Throughout my life, I've given all the excuses myself already. I have an excuse for everything. I remember when I was a kid, my mom once showed me a book called 150 Excuses Out of Life. I think I could write a book, 20,000 excuses out of life. I don't have money, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have an education, there's no end, right? Each one, everybody has some sort of story. After sitting with by now it's tens, in plural, of thousands of people privately over the years, I've heard every excuse that there is. From being a victim, to being abused, to being this, to being that. I'm not downplaying. These tragedies should never happen again and everybody should be safe and protected and happy, but really? Now what, you want to stay stuck there forever? Move on, move forward a little bit in life. Hashem yilachem lachem, let God take care of that. Make your battles, God's battles, the ones that He sends you, the nisyonot, and save yourself from the tzarot. It's a very big lesson. And by the way, that gives a lot of strength. Every time you have a test and it's hard to pass, if you just think for a second, I'm going to be saving myself from problems in life, suddenly it'll become very easy to pass it. I'm telling you. It's hard to make that connection in your brain on the spur of the moment. But in theory, if you're able to train your brain, then when you're tested with something, somebody has a good piece of gossip, you're dying to listen. Now you say, wait a second. When I'm 90, I won't have hearing issues because now I'm not going to listen to what I shouldn't listen to. You're going to run away like fire. Everything's going to be beautiful. And it won't even be hard for you. And Adarab, you'll be a happy person. You'll feel good inside. Wow, I could win. I'm not a loser. I guarantee that to you. And we need a big chizuk in this. And I want to conclude with saying one thing. Don't take this for face value because I'm not a tzaddik or a novi or a talmid chacham or anything. But I do feel that after 120, I don't want Hashem coming to me and saying, why didn't you give people at least what you feel? So you'll have my raw feelings and do with them whatever you want. The world has been in chaos for a very long time. That's not a new thing. Since COVID, it's been a lot more chaos. But one thing I think changed. And now, again, this is a matter of perception, so maybe I'm wrong, and I'm saying that very clearly. I'm just giving you my perception. That until a few weeks ago, they always said, we don't know, but in the same sentence, they said, we do know. Pay attention to what happened in 2 years now, right? We're 2 years into this nuts, craziness. All along they said, we don't know, but we know when the vaccine comes, that's going to stop it. Or we know when this comes, that. So on one hand, they played the game of don't know to justify all their crazy behavior. But on the other hand, they also showed a certain amount of knowledge. Use a mask, use this, use that, social distance. I'm going to use Israel as an example just because that's where Hashem's eyes are all the time and that's what counts as Jews for a parameter of how we look at things. Israel had the strictest lockdowns other than Australia of everywhere in the world. Israel's already on their 4th dose of the vaccine. We're complaining about being jabbed twice. They're already up to number 4. Israel had shut down schools, businesses, destroyed lives, sent cops to arrest Rosh Yeshivas for keeping yeshivas open, weddings, you name it. What didn't they do? You know, in Halakha it says that when you make Sheva Brachot, in order to say the Sheva Brachot, you need a panim chadashot, a new face. a new guest. That's why we invite new people to every night of Shabbat Brachot. Now for the Sfardim, if it's not a Beit HaChatan, you don't say Shabbat Brachot every night anyway, only the last bracha. But even if you do, you need Panim Chadashot. It's halacha. It makes no difference why now. So in Israel, during some of these lockdowns, there were people that had wedding dates. They wanted to get married. Now you can't get married. The cops are going to come and this and that. So there was a joke in Bnei Brak going around. We'll make Shabbat Brachot. We won't hide it. Because at least when the cop comes, we have Panim Chadashot. We can make a new cop every night of the 7 nights. We can make a new, it'll be easy. We'll be able to make the bracha easily. But why they do all those things, I don't know. I'm not going to get into the conspiracies of corruption and control and power and other things. But what they really did was, they thought they knew. They knew that they weren't sure, but they thought, we'll keep people distant, the virus won't spread as fast. We'll mask them up. I don't know, it'll help that way. We'll do this, it'll help that way. We'll vaccinate them, it'll help that way. Now Hashem sent in the past month or so some sort of strain that within it there are many sub-strains, by the way, for those, if you want to really be analytic. Initially they said 10, it's probably much more. But at least a minion will say that all the rules that we knew until now don't exist. Masks don't help, it spreads like wildfire. Everybody got it or is getting it, whether they know it or not. But on the flip side, it's not killing people. The governments were hoping they'll be able to lock the whole country down again. And Israel, not only didn't they lock down, they opened the country now. So anyway, everybody's going to get it. And anyway, it's not killing people. So welcome. Why should we ruin our economy once we're at it too? What's pshat in this? You know what's pshat in it? Because Hashem says, it's a Gemara twice in Bavli and Sanhedrin and in Sotah, that the final step before Mashiach comes is that Hashem is going to kashay talalti b'mitzrayim, just like He made a fool out of the Egyptians, He's going to make a fool out of the world. The greatest idol we have today is science. And I'm saying that as one who admires science and studied science and makes a living off of science. We believe that we can do everything. We can even clone man. We can cure everything. We can this, we can, there's no end to our arrogance. And He takes the biggest avodah zarah of the world, the healthcare system, and crumbles it by the core. You know nothing. Not only that, has the biggest doctors storm out because they don't want to get jabbed. Hospitals don't have staff. Besides for lack of knowledge, the whole thing just fell apart. Everything. The idol of the world fell apart. And everything they say, you know, if today you would go watch videos of these virologists and immunologists and other things of a year ago, you're not going to believe what's happening. Everything they said then, they're saying the opposite today, and all in 12 months. Now, of course, I don't blame them. I'm happy they're honest. But this never happened before in history. This is the final step that Hashem's showing the world. You think you're smart, you think you studied, you think you know, you think this, you think that. You got nothing, my friends. It's all a joke. The same virus that killed millions won't kill anybody anymore. I decided when it's going to start. I decided when it's going to end. It's all in my hands. And you got no say in the matter. And nobody cares what you're going to say in the matter. Now, am I 100% sure that I'm right? No. I'm telling you clearly, it's just my sensitivity and my own emotions. But in my world, this is probably the last step that Klal Yisrael had to go through before Mashiach. Now, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. But let me tell you what the risk involved is, and that's why I decided to say this, even though this is very out of character for me. If I'm wrong, we still have more time in Golus. But the good side is, at least we still have more time to do tshuva. But if I'm right, then we don't have much more time in Golus. And Chazal clearly say, B'Nisan nigalu, B'Nisan atidim ligael. And according to all pandemic specialists, the estimate right now is right around Nisan this year, is when this thing is going to be finally over. Which is an interesting coincidence. That's the current estimates, if you saw. And if I'm right, that means that if you don't do tshuva now, you're doomed forever. You lost it. At the last second, you gave up. Why would you want to lose your life at the last second? What should a person do and be saved? Make Torah and Gemilut Chesed your life. Let your struggles be in Chesed. You have to go out of your way to give somebody a ride. Let your struggles be in learning. It was hard to learn, you were tired, but you came anyway to learn. Let that be your struggles, and then no virus is going to hurt you, and no pandemic is going to hurt you, and no financial collapse is going to hurt you, nothing's going to hurt you. buy as much insurance as you can today for tzedakah. I was telling my partner the other day on the phone, I strongly advise this to everybody. So I think we have to give much more than we're giving now already. So he said, what do you mean? We're already giving like way beyond anything normal. I said, no, I want you to know the facts. Everybody's predicting this global economic collapse based on inflation and many other factors. Let's just give a ton now. And we bought insurance that it won't affect us. And on the contrary, in every down market, many people make fortunes. Let's just buy insurance. So we insure everything else in life. Let's use tzedakah now in the biggest, best way to buy ourselves insurance. It's not going to affect us. Choose your battles. Deal with the things that are nisyonot, that are the tests from Hashem, instead of aleinu ending up in the tzarot and the problems and in the situations. Chas v'sholom, I didn't give musa to anybody. That was me talking to myself. I hope to become a Baal Tshuva myself one day, and I hope that day is today already. Hayomim mikolot tishma'u. Tonight I should already do tshuva. Together with everybody, Be'ez Hashem, we should be zocheh, lebiat goel b'mehera v'yameinu, amen v'amen.